Two of the largest low-cost airlines in Europe are Ryanair and Easyjet. Together they had a 30% market share in the entire European aviation market. So how do they compare to each other? What are the differences and what are the similarities? Let's talk aviation. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe. This really helps the channel grow and makes it easier for others to find. Before we make a direct comparison between Ryanair and Easyjet, let's have a look at the history of both airlines. First, Ryanair. Its history dates back to 1984. For the first 5 years of its operations, it acted as a relatively small regional airline based in Dublin, Ireland. This changed in 1990. Their current CEO, Michael O'Leary, decided that it was time for a change, and he repositioned the airline as the first low-cost airline in Europe, using a similar model as Southwest used over in the US. The airline profited, just like Southwest, from the deregulation of the aviation market and grew over the years to become the largest in Europe. EasyJet's history starts 10 years after that of Ryanair. Back in 1995, the Greek Cypriotic Stelios Hagiannou decided that there was room in the market for low-fare travel. By lowering fares, flying would become accessible to a larger public. The airline operated its first flight out of London Luton Airport. And for the first 2 years of its existence, the airline didn't even have its own air operator certificate and thus couldn't operate any flight itself. So they were forced to use wet lease constructions and have other airlines operate EasyJet planes. Similar to Ryanair, the airline took advantage of the deregulation of the aviation market and grew year upon year until the pandemic forced the airline to cancel most of its flight. So both airlines have inspired their business model from Southwest's and perfected it for the European market. One of the key points in operating a low-cost airline is having optimal fleet commonality. By having one type of plane, an airline can use all of its flight crew on all of its planes. And also on the ground, maintenance is more streamlined if the airline has a limited variety in its fleet. Both Ryanair and Easyjet use a single type, yet the largest difference between the airlines is probably here. Ryanair has chosen the Boeing 737 family and Easyjet the A320 family. Currently, Ryanair operates a fleet of 469 aircraft, and of those, 410 are 737-800s and 59 the newer 737 MAX 8. They also have an open order for more than 100 MAXs. The fleet of Easyjet is a bit smaller, at 322 aircraft in total. Almost 100 of them are the smaller A319, and more than half are A320s. And the airline is currently renewing part of its fleet with the more efficient A320neo and A321neo. They too have an order for over 100 more aircraft, being a mix between the neo versions of the A320 and A321. To operate the flights, both airlines have a number of subsidiaries. Like many others, they have the subsidiaries for the purpose of looser labor laws and lower tax rates. However, EasyJet also has a subsidiary for a different reason. Until 2020, Great Britain was part of the European Union, and thus the airline operated from the free market within the Union. To ensure the airline could keep doing so, they created a subsidiary, EasyJet Europe, over in Vienna, Austria. In total, Ryanair has 4 subsidiaries next to the main airline: the Polish-based BAS, the UK-based Ryanair UK, and 2 Maltese ones, Malta Air and Lauda Europe. Next to EasyJet's main airline, EasyJet UK, EasyJet has the Austrian-based subsidiary EasyJet Europe, and it has a minority stake in EasyJet Switzerland. Both Ryanair and EasyJet have their largest hubs around London. Ryanair uses London's Stansted Airport, and EasyJet has a large presence at London Gatwick and London Luton Airport. To wrap up, let's have a look at the numbers. Keep in mind, in their annual reports, both EasyJet and Ryanair use a slightly different definition of a year. Up until 2020, this doesn't matter that much. But this does explain how the passenger numbers and revenue are impacted by the pandemic differently for both airlines. Good, with that out of the way, let's have a closer look at the passenger numbers. Here, Ryanair beats EasyJet handsomely, and the relative gap between the two seems to increase in favor of Ryanair. But on the revenue side, things are a bit different. Here, there is little difference between the two airlines, although it appears that in the years before the pandemic, Ryanair seems to sneak ahead. What are your thoughts about Ryanair and EasyJet? Have you ever flown with one of them? Or both? And what are your experiences? Do you think I missed something that should have been included in the comparison? Or that should be part of a future comparison video? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and please consider subscribing to Let's Talk Aviation.